Test, Testo, Testarossa. Reality, whether from the standpoint of simulation theory or from the perspective of social dynamics, is merely the manifestation of an interconnected web of expectations. You can describe these expectations as thoughts or observations. You can describe them however you like, but the implication of this reality is that the stuff of our experience is composed of a constituent matter which reflects our impulses. As such, imagine that every person produced a kind of expectation field created by their impulses, a catalogue of their ultimate predictions about what is and what should be. This expectation field populates our reality around us even when we are not directly observing an event or occurrence. So, for example, if we are sitting in our home, we might not observe what is happening out on the street in front of our home, but our minds have expectations about what in particular is happening. These expectations provide the framework for our passive experience of reality. If we do not step beyond these expectations, if we do not stretch the limit of them, we will never see the truly extraordinary. Now think of the mind as a filter as well. Our minds are continually looking for particular things as objects transition from the passive attention of our minds to the conscience. Events or things which are out of the ordinary will not enter our consciousness if we do not allow them to. We must expect the unexpected, permit the truly strange to enter our awareness if we are to perceive it. Now, there are ways that one can increase the likelihood one will perceive the unexpected. It begins with the admission that our lives, our expectations, are dominated by our habits and routines. The first step in moving beyond the ordinary is learning to stretch these routines and habits. We expect that when it is nighttime, the world will be at rest for the most part, just as we expect that during the daytime, the world will be active and alive. Human activity can be broken into shells of routine or cycle. Here we have, it looks like an onion. We have the outer sleep cycle, then the ingestion cycle, then the excretion cycle, and the inner sexual cycle. Each shell of activity modulates the expectation field of a given person. But each of these shells of habit or routine play a role in ultimately entangling us in the interconnected web of human expectations and routine. Imagine that these shells of routine are like the insulation of our consciousness from direct exposure to the communal expectation field. Ich habe Walnüsse gegessen und ich vertrage sie nicht besonders gut. By remaining within the gamut of these shells, we are sure to never disentangle our minds from the interconnection of our basic, most rudimentary expectations. Now it is important also to note that our expectation field can be concentrated or released according to the social tension in our bodies. If we depart from our basic routine in any of the above shells, what we will see is that our bodily tension is amplified until there is a release. Imagine, for example, you eat nuts. Na gut. For example, that each of the shells in the above diagram represents a separate level of bodily tension. They resist the movement of the other shells into the territory through tension, as oil and water subsist in relative separation through tension. To enable us to experience the truly extraordinary, we must learn to puncture these shells of routine or habit. Now, how does one begin to unravel the nature of one's basic habits and routines? Let's start with the sleep cycle. One can dislodge the sleep cycle in time by sleep deprivation, or one can alter the sleep rhythm by alternation more often between states of sleep and wakefulness. The practicalities of doing this aside, it is not that difficult to do with concerted effort. Second, the cycle of ingestion. This may involve anything from food to the air we breathe, to any drugs we may be addicted to. Any ingestion is addictive and habit forming. Thus, we can say that the ingestion shell can be further subdivided into air, food and water, and drugs. Each of these subshells corresponds to a rhythm and thus to a pattern of behavior, which conditions the tensions under which our bodies function, and therefore the expectations we produce. For each subshell, we must learn to either abstain or alter the rate or pattern by which we consume or ingest substances. It may be as simple as learning to alter our breathing through breathing exercises or intermittent fasting to alter our ingestion of food and water, or abstaining from, say, cigarettes. Although some of these habits have obvious techniques for which we can alter the routine, others may require further elaboration, which will be done in later chapters. One of the essential preparatory steps in creating glitches involves the elimination of these patterns. It is not enough to practice the exercises described in this book in the morning, only to eat a habitual lunch in the afternoon. To truly see past the veil, you must abstain from these impulses for a time or dislodge them in time. The reason for this is that natural impulses like sleeping, eating, urination, defecation, sexual activity all release tension and create predictable patterns in our behavior. That is why, if you attempt to produce a glitch, you will find that your impulses become more pronounced and difficult to resist. As a preparatory step, it is necessary to abstain from eating to dull the sense of hunger. Abstain from sleep to dislodge the patterns of your life, or abstain from sexual activity for a brief time, in brackets, to heighten your body's response to social tension. Oh mein Gott, das brauche ich nicht. So, some of these practices may obviously reduce tension. Das ist schon besser. But they all contribute to the creation of habits that must be temporarily broken to create glitches. Creating glitches is ultimately about creating patterns and breaking them, which means that the patterns that define us, our impulses, must be ignored or redirected. In the last chapter, chapter 2, in the last chapter, I explained how our routines modulate our expectation field. I explained how it is necessary to dislodge these routines or habits in order to truly experience the impossible. In this chapter, I would like to explain the interconnection of our expectation field with others through the expression of meaning. Language is the fundamental foundation of uniformity. Meaning expressed through language is how we transmit our expectations to another and how we receive expectations from another. It is the medium by which our individuality becomes unified with the whole. Pause. But it is more than that. It is the intersection point of our bodies with our minds, the intersection of our mind with other minds, and the intersection of singular realities with multiple ones. The expression of meaning does not necessarily mean only vocal or auditory meaning. Language takes a variety of forms, from the physical, such as hand language, to the auditory, such as vocal, to the visual, such as facial expressions. Suffice it, suffice it to say, a person's ability to express meaning is limited only by his or her imagination. But for the average or typical person, the expression of meaning can be described by the below diagram. This onion has hands, face, posture, voice, location. The purpose of this diagram is to show the five basic mechanisms or levels by which we express meaning in a spatial sense. Spatial sense. We express this through hand language, through our facial expressions, through our body posture and posing, through our voice, and finally through our location, proximate to other objects or people. These are what I call the spatial, 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 from space with a T. What the hell? English? English is Englishing. These are what I call the spatial plates of reality. For each of these plates represents a separate intersection between our expectations and the expectations of others. We create expectations by our hand-body language. We create them by our words. We create them by our facial expressions, as we create them by location and space, just as the shells of cycles of our rhythms modulate or our expectations field unconsciously. The shells of meaning represent the modulation of our expectation field consciously. The expression of meaning modulates the expectation field we produce, thereby restricts or undermines our ability to experience the unexplainable. Each shell of the spatial plates represents a distinct level which can be used to modulate our expectation field and thereby either expand or contract our conscious awareness into what is ordinarily unseen. These hands in Hebrew. I will start off at the plate of the hands, the lowest of the spatial plates. The expression of the plate of the hands takes the form of spatial transformations. In the expression of meaning through gesture, the plate of the hands uses the medium of spatial transformations to express complex ideas and concepts. These complex ideas and concepts take the form of a narrative. A narrative conveys or expresses tension, just as the rhythms of the body keep tension at bay. This tension represents both the modulation of one's expectation field and the transmission of that tension into the expectation fields of others. Thus, the four spatial shells or plates are overlaid on top of the four shells of bodily cycle. In mathematics, there are four forms of transformations: translation, rotation, reflection, dilation. But in reality, there are other transformations relevant to the expression of meaning which involve these transformations, such as in relation to an object. Each of these transformations can be used through the expression of the hands as a medium to transmit a particular series of concepts or ideas. Implicit in this is that the hands are carriers of emotional tension. The rhythm of tension, which is the product of the four shells corresponding to our bodily rhythms. Thus, these four bodily rhythms produce in us four radiation levels of tension, which rise through our bodies into each level, which corresponds to the expression of meaning reaching the hands, which is the outermost of the spatial plates or shells. Visually, we can understand this through the below diagram. Face, voice, sleep, ingestion, excretion, sexual. Posture, hands, location. Our basic vocabulary of spatial transformations manifests distinctly as one rises to each of the shells or plates of activity, but the same basic vocabulary remains regardless. Each transformation expresses meaning by visually modulating the tension in our bodies. Thus, the tensional waves created by the four shells of bodily rhythm are the stuff of meaning, while the transformations themselves provide the essence. One reveals tension by the velocity by which these transformations are accomplished and the frequency of their occurrence. Altering the manner by which we express meaning has the effect of altering the expectation field we produce and interact with. This may be as simple as using idiosyncratic postures. During conversation to negate the expectations of others. Idiosyncratic. Idiotisch, nein. Eigenartig, ja. Okay. Das heißt, ich rede mit jemandem, mach so dabei. Was ist das hier? Redest du mit mir? Yo, redest du mit mir? You talking to me? Or it may be complex as manipulating mirroring techniques within the context of a social dialogue. The goal of glitching is to undermine the rhythm of normal social transmission of bodily tension, to expose the sinews of the interaction and thereby release the unusual beneath it. Punkt. Kapitel 3. When one expectation field reaches another through the expression of meaning, the two corresponding individuals will do one of two things. If they agree on the expectation or the meaning, they will mirror each other's facial expressions, posture, vocal intonation, and hand gestures. If they disagree, they will produce contrary or antithetical alignments. This phenomenon is the manifestation of the linking of or disconnection of two expectation fields, expressed through the bodily tension of the individuals involved. Thus, just as altering one's bodily rhythms can have the effect of dislodging one's expectation field in time, revealing the sinews of the reality beneath, so too can disrupting the linkages between expectation fields reveal the underlying occurrence of the improbable. There are a very variety of techniques that can produce such misalignments. First, in a social setting, one can incorporate mirroring into posture, facial expression, hand gesture, and vocal intonation when it is inappropriate, or eliminate it when it is appropriate. One can use odd, idiosyncratic postures, expressions of movements which would not usually be mirrored to produce a similar result. One can simply balk at conformity with the common expectations of a place or setting. One can alter the rhythm by which one consumes a beverage, or alter one's breathing rhythms. There are manifold ways that one can dislodge the regular occurrence of the unification of the expectation field. The meth- metho- method- methodology. The methodology behind doing so is limited only by the imagination of an individual social actor. Obviously, because a social setting has more people, there is a greater likelihood of conflict between two expectation fields. Thus, social settings are the most productive places to experiment with creating a glitch. Below, I have described a few exercises one can use to prepare for such a social setting, keeping in mind that the below are merely examples of the ways that one can dislodge the common expectations that produce uniformity. Find a quiet place, preferably a chair that is comfortable, and make sure the room is quiet. Hold your breath, and so on and so on. That's a breathing exercise, attention exercise. After you've completed the breathing exercises, the next step is to focus and release your attention. You'll find this easier to do after you've completed the breathing exercise. Once you've completed the breathing exercise, stay seated in your comfy chair. Allow yourself to take stock of your attention. You should find now that your attention is more diffuse. That is, your attention should be focused on the background sounds, the ambient noise of the room, the neighborhood, the city or rural area where you live. You should hear insects, birds, cars, and the general flowing back and forth of the area. Listen to your thoughts. After completing the above exercises, go somewhere else, a coffee shop, a restaurant, a bar, and make sure you remove any distractions like your phone from your person beforehand. Listen when you should not be listening. Focus on the things people say that you might not otherwise listen to. Damn. I'm trying to do the opposite. Find a table and listen. Allow your attention to find the background, then focus on the conversation and listen to it carefully. I will do the exact opposite when I go out next time. As you listen, try to find the theme of their thoughts. Oh mein Gott! Aber ich muss sagen, das ist, ähm, wie sagt man? Kudos to the author. Kudos. As you listen, the only reason why I say it like this is because for eons I did this. As you listen, try to find the theme of their thoughts. You should feel their words flowing through you. Where's my machine? Where's the machine? As if the conversations are somehow a reflection of the ambient noise in your mind. Listen. Try to imagine some contradiction inside yourself. No matter what it is, just allow some contradiction in your internal thoughts to form and think about it exclusively. Take it personally. While you do this, continue to listen to the conversation and listen to how the topic's word choice reflect the internal contradiction. If you continue to do this, you will find conversations around you begin to reflect your internal stream. Number 4, social exercises. After you have completed the 3 above, find a table somewhere, a bar, cafe, restaurant, and allow your attention to focus on their body language. Allow the conversation to proceed naturally, but pay attention to when they shift forward in their seats, rest their bodies on tables. Pay attention to when they mirror you and when they mirror each other. Now, once you have a grasp on the dance, don't allow yourself to get lost. Remain mindful. As it gets easier to listen and pay attention, start manipulating or posture your mirror theirs. And then once complete, once they start reacting to it, break the mirroring pattern. Every little piece of body language counts. Continue this process for as long as you can while listening to these ambient conversations in the background and your thoughts. As you get better at this, you should start to find that again. The ambient conversation begins to reflect the ambient noise in your mind. The longer you keep this up, the more closely it should mirror your thoughts. If you succeed, the ambient conversation should first appear to somehow relate to a contradiction in your mind. Then, represent conversation that you could infer refers to you. Finally, it should be directly about you, or your thoughts, or your experiences, or your actions. Postural exercises. This one is best completed after the attention exercises. Go somewhere where there are people and practice altering your posture to produce changes in other people's behavior. For example, when waiting in a line, stand aggressively and then passively. Try changing the angle of your chin. Practice controlling your eyes, avoiding objects or self-consciousness, then identifying them. As you practice these skills, intentionally using your posture to create shifts in the postures and movements of others, you will find yourself falling prey to postural releases. Spann die Arschbacken an. These are postural shifts which loosen the joints to produce a release of social tension. The key is to slowly learn to reverse these or prevent them from forming in the first place. The goal is to slowly undermine the natural process of group relaxation. Watch your ass. As you do so, listen to the ambient conversation, and like the above, you will experience shifts which reflect the contradiction in your mind.